are driven by very high demand. Now, the slow pace of new housing also demonstrates an unsustainable housing model. In other countries, the best practices, tenants are usually charged 1 month, every month they pay their rent. So they do not have to pay an advance, not even of a few months. Usually after the landlord and the tenant have agreed on the accommodation for a specific purpose, the tenant proceeds to pay monthly. These are in the best practices. Ghana is probably the only country in Africa that allows landlords to charge this advance, this high advance from tenants. Last week's ministerial vetting, if you listened to the minister designate for Works and Housing, Honorable Asenso Boakye, he said under his watch they will be introducing a legislation to ensure that rent is charged yearly. But is this the ideal situation for tenants? What has led to the determination of this particular model? The current Rent Act, as we know it, says that for residential purposes, you cannot charge more than 3 months in advance. This is what our present Rent Act says in Ghana. And for commercial premises, you cannot charge more than 6 months in advance. So the issue here is enforcement. We're going to be joined by a tenant, Nana Ikuya Bakoma Apia. She'll be speaking to us, her experience as a tenant. We're also, in fact, joined in studio by Mr. Emmanuel Hove Posu. He is the Public Relations Officer for the Rent Control Department, who we cannot have this conversation without. They are a critical part of this conversation. So he is here, and we are going to be throwing him all our critical questions. We are also joined by Mr. Sami Amegaibo. He's the Executive Secretary of the Ghana Real Estate Development Association, GREDA. That's not the end of it. There's also Mr. Frederick Opoku. He's the Secretary General of the National Tenants Union of Ghana. Did you even know such joining us? He's the Secretary General, not of the UN, but of the National Tenants Union of Ghana. We're going to explore the options available and comfortably accommodate both tenant and landlord, so one party doesn't feel compromised. My name is Nwong Falong. I have the honor of steering this conversation to a logical conclusion. We'll go for a quick break, and when we come back, Spotlight News. Stay with us.
Unique, contemporary, engaging. Introducing the ultimate talk show that captures, scrutinizes, and stirs up conversations around relevant content across the globe. We talk to the movers and shakers in the tech, youth entrepreneurship, creative arts industry, and many more. Join me, Kwame A. Opoku, usher you to the realm beyond the headlines, new tech releases, trends, and clicks. It's going to be a fun ride on MS Conversations.
No, this is not business as usual. This is a different kind of business. From the global stock market to our central bank to insights on insurance and investment, Spotlight is the show for you. Here, we look beyond the numbers. On Spotlight, we'll tell you the complexity behind the figures. On Spotlight, we examine hardcore financial issues. Join me, Philip Nanfuri, on MX24, together with policymakers and experts as we talk business.
Welcome back to Spotlight. Thank you for staying with us. As introduced before we went on that break, we are discussing the rental situation in Ghana and the bill that is yet to be laid before Parliament proposing a yearly charge of rent. Before we get into that, we will take a listen to the minister's comments during his vetting, Honorable Asensio Boakye's comments. We will also take a listen to some opinions from tenants on the streets, and then we'll go into the conversation. Let's look at that.
The 1 year rent advance is charged after extensive engagement. So my understanding is first, everybody will accept it because they took part of it. And in that case, we will be in the position to enforce it. And before enforcement, we will make sure that we do extensive stakeholder sensitization for everybody to know its rights in the new rent act.
How is the government going to control them? That is one thing. They pay taxes. Is that not it? Yes. So if government say take 1 year, how is he going to control that? So from my point of view, I don't think it will work. I don't think it will work. Unless government have, he can have control over how they build their houses, how they take care of it and all that. And you know, here, so many things doesn't work. Even in the law, it says that if you have to paint your house, you have to go for permits. Nobody does that. So government there are so many things that you have to enforce before coming there. Otherwise, they are independent people. You can't control them.
There's a current law. Is it working? So how would this one work? They should ensure the existing law is working. Then we can move forward. If the existing law is not working, are they going to throw that one away? No. So let's enforce the existing one. Let it work. Then we see the way forward. Me as a tenant, I will be happy. I'll be happy if it works. But what the existing one now, the 3 months one is not working. So how are you going to ensure that the 1 year?
You know, it's not everybody that will get that bulk amount to pay for 2 years. When it's 1 year, someone can pay 1 year and then maybe gather some money and then pay for another year. So if the government should enforce it, it will help.
The housing issue is a big issue because a place like Ghana, the estate agents, they are not supported. Like when you travel to overseas, the estate agent, they have houses that they are renting it out. I don't think the government have a good policy for the estate agents or good policy for the banks to give people loans, housing loan. Now there is a pressure in Accra because people are migrating to Accra. And a lot of people don't have a place to stay. Because of that, when they come to Accra, because they need a place to stay, any money you ask them, they will pay. But if the government should bring a law, laws are good. Laws are made to protect people so that people don't do what they want. But with this issue, I don't think the government law will work because some people, they don't want to pay monthly because maybe they might squander the money. So when they have a lot of money, they want to pay maybe 2 years. It's a contract. Now, it's a form of contract, rent contract. When somebody signed a contract for 2 years, or giving a contract to somebody for 2 years, I think the person has to spend the 2 years. But if the government wanted to enforce that law on people, I don't think it's going to work. It's not going to work at all. Because I can decide not to rent my house out because you don't pay what I want. By the end of the day, the person who wants the house will suffer.
Welcome back. You're still watching Spotlight. So that's what the minister-designate, Honorable Asensio Boakye, had to say about amending rental practices in Ghana. You also had a cross-section of Ghanaians and their opinions about renting and charging. Why can't the 6 months be enforced? will the 1 year even be able to be enforced? Can we enforce it? Why are the laws not being enforced? I mentioned earlier that we are joined by Nana Ekia Afia. She's a tenant. We're also joined by Emmanuel Hove Bosu. He's a public relations officer of the Rent Control Department. He's in the studio with me. We're also joined on Zoom by Mr. Sami Amegaibo. He is the Executive Secretary of the Ghana Real Estate Development Association, GREDA, and Frederick Opoku. He's the Secretary General of the National Tenants Union of Ghana. I'm going to go to him first. So, Mr. Frederick Opoku, are you on the line, please?
Yeah, hello.
Thank you for giving us your time.
Thank you very much, for giving the Tenants Union of Ghana opportunity to also there is a law, and we expect previous ministers to have enforced that law to the latter, because the rent law seeks to probably to protect tenants in more, in a more understanding view. But unfortunately, because the law is not being enforced, tenants are now at the mercy of their landlords, and we have a atrocious landlord who do not see the need to do the needful, who don't care because they are into the open market. They say it's a free market. It's a market that you can do whatever you want because after all, I built my house and you cannot tell me anything to do. And the government of the Republic of Ghana, through the Minister of Housing, who has been designated a charge or what do you call it? He is supervising the work of the Rent Control Department of Ghana, an agency responsible for the implementation of this law. It's not doing anything to get the thing implemented. More to the point, the Rent Control Department of the Republic of Ghana would also say, yes, it is true that the law is enforced. We cannot do it because, one, we are deprived of A, B, or C, or D. That's why we can't do that. Our subventions are not coming. If it comes, that needs to be settled. Now, we have a significant doubt regarding the minister's. We have to give him that kind of doubt because currently his predecessors have done nothing to enforce the law. So it put us in a very unsecure situation to believe what he's saying. But he's a new person. So you can't transfer the mistakes that the predecessors did on him. We will give him the benefit of the doubt that yes, Mr. Asenso Boache, the designated Minister for Housing and Works, will do what is needful. And let me tell you, my sister, this time around, we are going to meet the minister. We are stakeholders because after all, we are the consumers of the housing they build. Whether it's a real estate, whether it's a private sector, we are the consumers of these houses that they build. And for that matter, we are a factor to reckon with that you cannot do without us. You cannot. Therefore, we are saying that what he has said, he's now being vetted. We are waiting for him to be accepted. If it happens, we are going to have a meeting, official meeting with the minister. Join with him. Agree on one or two things. Bring our proposal. We are not going to be just critics. We have issues on proposals that we would want to forward to him to consider. I remember when his predecessor, Honorable Atachina, was there. I was the first person after he was given that mandate to have visited him. The man was very rude. Very, very rude. Just to say the least. I'm telling you, and I spoke to him in person, that you don't know the person. I came to ask you, I'm also fronting for almost about 11 million people. You are now a minister. I know very well that you're a minister, but at least you should understand the cries of the masses. I just came to ask you, what are your plans? What can you bring on board? Then you are saying that the government must not be repeated by this new minister. I know he will be a listening minister, and we want to work with him. Now, I think we are doubting what he can do, but we still want to give him the benefit of the doubt that he will go by it because the article clause punishable by law that any landlord who rents more than 6 months per se for would probably have to be punished, and they aren't doing that. So we have a lot of doubts. But let's give this man the benefit of the doubt. As a young man, I know he's coming up with different initiatives, and he'll be a listening minister for now.
Thank you so much. That's the General Secretary for the National Tenants Union of Ghana, Frederick Opoku. He has a lot of questions and he has a lot of doubts, but he is also hopeful that Minister-designate for Works and Housing, Honorable Asensio Boakye, will be a listening minister who will listen to the plight of the masses and be able to meet them at the points of their need, at least listen to them and try to work with them. We also have on the line a tenant, Nana Ekia Apia, who I want to go to quickly. Madam, if you're on the line, fantastic. Thank you for joining us. Now, is 1 year acceptable to you, or do we go back and enforce the 3 months provision for residential and 6 months provision for commercial?
Okay. Thank you very much for giving me the opinion to the platform to show my opinion. Sorry. So personally, I think the 1 year is not entirely helpful because most of the people that want to rent a place in Accra are probably like national service, like people who just completed national service or university graduates who want to make a living in Accra. And most times we don't really have the money. Like we have little to no money to rent a place for like a whole year. And for me, I think the monthly one should be considered. A monthly charge for 3 months to 6 months, as you said. But that one is better. Aside the monetary issues, I think some landlords and landladies also have some behaviors that are very unbearable. So if it's a short stay, then you know you don't have to deal with that. Maybe the other months. Because then if you pay 1 year in advance and you're staying for like 2 months and you don't want to renew it, like you don't want to live any more months, they ask you to go and bring someone who can replace you before they can refund your money to you. And that's another level of stress because then you don't know anybody who is looking for a place so you can get your money back to be able to get a new place. So for these 2 reasons, for monetary reasons and for their behavior too, because it looks as if most of the landlords and landladies like the idea of having the money, but they don't have the heart to accommodate people. They don't have the heart to live with people who are not family members, but they just like the idea of having the money.
Nana Ekia Bokoma, thank you so much. This is an important angle to it. What about students who are trying to rent and do not have the money? Please do not hang up. We're still speaking. We'll come back to you shortly. What about students? What about young people who just left school and are even job hunting? How are they in Kumasi, in major cities? On the line, we also have Mr. Sami Amegaibo. He's the Executive Secretary of the Ghana Real Estate Development Association. Mr. Emmanuel, I'll be coming to you, but yes, you are the authority here, so let us hear everyone and then we'll come to you. So, Mr. Megaibo, if you're on the line, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity as well, and a good evening to your viewers and listeners as well.
Thank you so much. From the developer's perspective, 1 year or 6 months or 3 months for residential, what is your take?
Well, I think the demand and supply is normally the benchmark that dictates the market for rental. And so for us as developers, it's a business opportunity for most of the people that we build for. A lot of our clients buy our properties and purely use them for commercial purposes. They buy it and rent it out, so it's a business for them. And so any form of returns that comes to them is important to them. And so the best way to garner such resources is crucial. And so if rent will be coming to them regularly, it is fine for them. But how regular will rent be paid? I normally cite examples of our current situation with when we used to have the postpaid electric metering system. If you look at that system, you will be hearing from ECG and our Ghana Water Company and most of the service providers complaining that anytime it is due for collection of the payment of bills, it becomes difficult for them to collect. And so all of them, change from the postpaid system to prepaid system. And if you go around the country right now, you realize that since Electricity Corporation changed from the postpaid to prepaid system, I haven't seen anybody's house without lights, that he doesn't have money to pay. But when it was postpaid, people took advantage and refused to be responsible and created a problem for the service provider. This example can be translated into the rental system as well. When we met with most of our clients, their concern has been that collecting rent from the typical Ghanaian worker on a monthly basis is going to be a headache, and there will be too many confrontations moving forward. So they get a bit of rest and assurances, and they are comfortable when they are able to collect something in advance so that they don't get confrontational with their tenant on a monthly basis. And Mr.
Megaibo, I don't mean to cross you there, but if this is their reason for charging so many months in advance, isn't it selfish to the tenant to expect the tenant to be able to afford so many months in advance?
Well, you see, I am trying to discuss it in a way where we all can try to understand the balance between when the decision was made, because I was privy and I was actually part of the stakeholder that discussed this rent review. And these were some of the things that we agreed, we talked about, and finally agreed to the 1 year rent in advance. And also, as I said, as an investment, for some of our people, some of them even took loan facilities, and also they say that if I'm able to collect so much in advance and I go back to my lender, I pay back, I'm able to reduce my interest rates that would eventually would have been slapped on me. And so from the business point of view, if they get something in advance, that's better. But agreeably, rental as the best practice worldwide is usually monthly. All they need from you is to pay a refund, a deposit against damages and stuff, like 1 month deposit, and then subsequently you pay yearly. But this is okay and will be applicable and very well implemented in Ghana if we have our systems in place where people's salary and people's income can be tied to the rent. So, for example, if I have rented my property to staff of a particular organization, will we be able to get it done in a way that the rent will be tied so that maybe even the monthly rent can be deducted from source and paid to me, the landlord, directly into my account? If we can get some of these assurances and commitment from both sides, both the tenant and the landlord will be committed to the terms of street. And the example I gave you about water bill and electricity bill, it is very real. You go out right now, I haven't seen anybody's house that doesn't have lights on because they are charging you prepaid metering. They are always responsible to pay their rent on time because their electricity bill on time, because they need it. But if you make it postpaid right now, go round back to the same people who were so responsible under the prepaid system will suddenly become irresponsible. 2 months, 3 months, they'll be in default. And so that has been the problem. But purely, the current situation we are having is a demand and supply. If we had adequate housing on the market, you realize that it's the landlords that will be chasing the tenant even to come and take the houses. But today, it is the vice versa. It is rather the tenants that are chasing the landlords, because the number of units that are available for rental are just inadequate for the number of people that are chasing it. And to be frank with you, this is perennial in only the urban and capital towns. If you go to the...
we mentioned Accra and Kumasi specifically.
Yes. These are the areas that we get this problem so often. But the other places, go around and check. My own, I have my half come from Cape Coast. And I'm telling you that Cape people are not rushing for it like if it was in Accra here. So the situation, it is not nationwide. It is just at certain places that needs to be.
But we also know that in Accra and Kumasi, they have the largest population of Ghanaians, especially Ghanaians that are migrating for work. So it affects quite a lot of people. Now, the important thing here you have highlighted is that it doesn't happen in the north too, where I'm from. So my question to you is, if landlords in Accra and Kumasi are probably saying, you said during your meeting that it's a headache collecting rent monthly from Ghanaians.
I think the other towns also, they also go through the same advance system, but it is not, you know, the long-term one like we have in Ghana, Accra here, we have 2 years, 3 years. They also do a bit of advance, maybe up to 6 months. But you see, when you are enacting laws and regulations for a system to work effectively, and you do, you know, cluster and isolation, you know, implementation of regulations of this nature, it becomes difficult. So ideally, you spread it across and rather look at certain mitigation measures at where it is more prevalent. So, for example, in Accra, I think the number one solution is to increase the housing stock in Accra, and that is where the difficulty is. Government has to be committed to dealing with the housing situation and understand the agency with which we need to do this. We have had successive governments coming into office, spending their time talking, and before we say Jack, it's 4 years and nothing serious as designate as saying. They will come in, they are compelled to make certain promises, but like my brothers who have been saying, we have just recycled the problems. We have continued to recycle problems instead of solving them, and so we keep worsening the situation. Time as time passes by. So we need to look at the issue of supplying adequate housing. If you look at the entire country, there's a spread of demand everywhere, and the table, the data is available. How many units of houses that can be supplied within Accra that will augment the shortages? How much is in Kumasi? How much is? But we need to take pragmatic steps to deal with the supply of housing. And this things will naturally die down. If there is adequate supply of housing on the market, you don't need to go to anybody's house, and you don't even need to pass any legislation. And as I told you, the landlords will be chasing all over the place to look for people to come and occupy their houses. And so for me, no matter what legislation we put in place to regulate rent control, I sincerely think that it will be better channeled into the arena of supplying more houses onto the market, and the situation will die down naturally.
Thank you, Mr. Megaibo. He's the Executive Secretary of the Ghana Real Estate Developers Association, GREDA, and he highlights a very interesting, very complex problem of the interaction of the forces of demand and supply on the market. Because on the rental market, on the housing market, when the forces of demand and supply are interacting, it is inanimate and it cannot be forced by any hand, because it is free will. Now, when these forces interact, clearly supply of housing falls short of the demand of housing, which puts pressure on the price of housing. This pressure leads to increased rental costs. It also leads to landlords being able to manipulate and practice unauthorized ways of collecting rent from the tenant, because if there's pressure on the available housing, it becomes a matter of who can pay more and who can pay in advance. And so the landlord seems to be winning over here. Now, before I quickly go to the PRO of the Rent Control Department, Mr. Emmanuel Postu, who is in the studio with us, I want to quickly find out from the Tenants Union, Mr. Opoku, were you consulted during this consultation? Because we realized that the Real Estate Developers Association were consulted. Was your union consulted? Mr. Opoku, if you can hear me, just unmute yourself and just let us quickly know if...
Hello?
Yes, please.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, I'm saying that we weren't consulted.
You were not consulted. Okay.
We were not consulted. Yes.
That is an interesting point to note. Thank you so much. But they are very critical stakeholders. So it seems the tenant is not receiving much regard in this interaction. Now let's come to Mr. Osu. Mr. Osu, it seems you are in the hot seat. There have been a few things that have been highlighted.
Okay.
Why is the present law not working? One, because clearly it puts more relief on tenants than this 1 year that is being proposed. Number two, I'll get to number two, but you answer this first.
Okay. Now, before I answer your question, let me categorically correct this mistake that is running in town now. I heard senior MPs quoting the law wrongly. There's nothing in the Rent Act, that is the Act 220, that mentioned 3 months for residential and 6 months for commercial. Let me quote verbatimly. Okay. When you look at section 25(5), it states, any person in a condition of grant, renewal or continuancy of a tenancy demand in the case of a monthly or short tenancy, the payment in advance of more than a month's rent, or in the case of a tenancy exceeding 6 months, the payment in advance of more than 6 months' rent, shall be guilty of an offense and upon conviction by a rent magistrate be liable to a fine not exceeding 10,000 cedis or a term of imprisonment not exceeding 2 years. So there's nothing in this act that has stipulated that if it's a residential, you are not supposed to collect or pay more than 3 months, and then if it's a commercial, more than 6 months.
So what we have
the
there
law states that if it's a short tenancy, that's a tenancy that is monthly, the landlord has no right to demand or to collect more than 2 months, for instance, or more from the tenant. And if it's more than 6 months tenancy, what this means is that you can sign a tenancy agreement with somebody for 2 years, 4 years, 5 years.
You charge 6
but when
months.
it comes to the payment, you don't have the right as a landlord to demand more than 6 months or collect more than 6 months from the tenant. So this is the law. And again, there's nothing like 3 months, 6 months. If it's a long tenancy, the law forbids you
6 months
to collect more than 6 months.
It's a short tenancy,
it's a short
2
tenancy.
months, as we say.
Exactly. And then there are some other comments which I want to make. Somebody say, how would the 1 year be enforced? You know, the enforcement of the law is a collective responsibility. I appreciate Mr. Opoku who have met.
But you see that the tenants are vulnerable.
Yes. I've met on several platforms. If somebody demands or collects more than 6 months from you, and you sit down because of victimization or because you like the environment, so you quickly go and pay, and you don't report to the rent control, you are not helping us to implement the act. Because rent control cannot be everywhere at the same time.
Let me ask you something. If I come and report, can the person throw me out?
You know, under Section 17, there are laid down procedures under which a landlord can stand on to evict a tenant. And there's nothing there that says that if you report your landlord, the landlord has the right to stand on that to evict you. So the law protects you. It comes under what we call an inducement. So when you report the landlord and the landlord starts to do certain things that will prompt you to move out from your premises, then that constitutes an inducement, which is
punishable by law.
By the
but
act.
what if I haven't paid yet? And you see, like I'm saying, the forces interact and set the stage for what is about to happen. I go for an apartment, there are 10 people coming for that apartment. The landlord tells me you have to pay 1 year. The first person to pay takes the apartment. And so what do? I go and I report to rent control. What is even the guarantee that after reporting I'll get the apartment?
No, you know, the issue is that, you know, our forefathers have sacrificed for us. That's why we are enjoying now. So if you sacrifice by reporting the landlord for him to be sanctioned, and then you forfeit that environment or that structure, and we sanction, as I said, we sanction the landlord will not go back and then collect from the next person. So just as I said, it's a collective responsibility. We shouldn't leave it only on the head of the government or on the head of the rent control department. The other issue is about the rental agents. Okay, the rental agents are also helping in this rental business. But under Section 25 again, has been a stipulated charges that they have to do. You know, they're also contributing to this high demand. Another 10%. It's just like the insurance, the general insurance business. You know, the insurance business has sent agents to town to go and get clients to their business or their company. It's only when they get client that the client come to pay a premium that the insurance company take a commission and give it to the insurance agent. So it's the same way. So what you are saying is the education we admit that for the past years, education has not gone on. So people do not know their rights and responsibilities. Landlords neither do not know, tenants do not know. But the issue now is if you know your right and you know your responsibility and you stand on it, the other person or the other persons will be forced to do the right thing. So these are, and then again, Mr. Opoku mentioned about the goodwill, which is illegal. Absolutely. Under Section 25 again, 1B, it states that any person who in respect of any premises demand or receive any condition, whether in money or in kind, or any other manner whatsoever, or whether by way of rent, fine, premium, or otherwise, for grant, renewal, continuancy, or assessment,
some form of it.
Yes.
So she says, what if you are already living in the house and you paid for 2 years previously?
Yes.
Now it's time to renew the rent. You don't have money for 2 years, so you paid for 1 year. But the landlord wants 2 years.
Yeah.
Because you haven't paid the rest of the 1 year, the landlord disconnects your water and lights.
Yes, so this is the education we are giving, that as a landlord, if even an offense is committed in your opinion or before you, you don't have the right to start locking people's pipes, cutting people's light, and just blocking people access.
In this case, the tenant has not even committed a crime because you are not supposed to pay 2 years to begin with.
Exactly. And again, from Section 10 to Section 19, talks about an assessment. So again, the landlord has no right to increase rent every 6 months or every year without coming to rent control for him to apply what we call an assessment. When we finish the assessment, we give you an assessment certificate, which we do every 2 years. So that there, in the assessment certificate, we state how much you are supposed to charge any prospective tenant. And again, when you are coming for renewal, we come and then look at the state of the house. If it's deteriorating, you don't expect us to increase the rent for you. We will rather bring it down so that it will compensate whoever is residing in the premises until the tenancy expires. So these are issues that tenants should know. These are issues that landlords should know. So that when we all abide by the rules of the game, we can live harmony in the country.
Mr. Posu, this thing that you mentioned, the assessment that determines how much the landlord is supposed to charge as rent.
Yes.
How do I, as a tenant, determine that this landlord has gone for an assessment from rent control? Because it seems people price apartments or houses however they want to. They build their house, they look at the cost they used to build the house and the profit they want to get on it. Then they tell you, this is a chamber and hall, but it's 1,000 cedis monthly. Chamber and hall, 2,000 cedis monthly. Do I demand for an assessment certificate from the rent control?
Yeah.
Because this tenant is too known, you know. Okay. So another person is paying, and I'm standing there saying that, where is your assessment certificate?
Okay. What is interesting is that exactly under Section 10, it gives the landlord the right to apply for the assessment certificate. It gives you, the tenant, the right to apply for this assessment certificate, and any other person who is interested in the apartment.
So do I request from the landlord, or I ask
you? You can come and then apply as a tenant for this assessment. We give you the certificate, we give a copy to the landlord, and then we give you a copy as a tenant. And if any other person comes, we also give a copy to it. But a quick comment on Mr. Meibo's issue about guarantee. You know, the government has also come out, apart from this passing of the bill, what we call the National Rental Assistance Scheme. It's a loan scheme that is going to be paid for those who can be guaranteed of monthly salary. So this assurance has been, it's a
more holistic solution where we simply pay monthly. So the law adjusts itself to ensure that we pay monthly. Solve the situation.
Yeah, so that's what I mentioned under Section 17. Section 25(5). That if it's a short tenancy, which a lot of landlords are now complying with, you come to the office, though the number is negligible, but some landlords have started collecting monthly rent from their prospective tenants. So if all of us will do with this assurance, and then with the clause in under Section 17 that tenants do not have the right to owe you more than a month's rent, if they does, it will be an offense of which you can stand on to evict. Then we will all live harmony in the country.
Mr. Posu, I don't know if we can achieve harmony between landlords and tenants.
No, we can do it. If we all make our mind that we are going to this direction, just as you mentioned.
You see, the harmony will come when both parties are satisfied.
Yes.
But in this case, we see the landlords clearly ahead of the tenants. How would they be harmony?
No, so just as you mentioned, and not to insult anybody, but a lot of landlords are too greedy. I'm sorry to use that word. Yes. I'm sorry, very, very sorry to use that word. What we have to understand is the building industry is a long-term investment. It's not a short term that you build and then within 2 years or 3 years you want to recoup all your money.
But let me tell you something.
It's a long-term investment. If you and then
not to speak on behalf of the landlords, but let me come in here because we've had a lot of comments about that, and a lot of landlords argue that first of all, government did not help them to buy their land.
Exactly.
2, building materials are very expensive. 3, they are under financial pressure from the banks because they've taken loans to build. So they are under pressure to pay back the loan within a certain period. Otherwise, high interest rates. So they also have an angle they are coming from.
Exactly.
So if we are not helping them or subsidizing the housing, how do we tell them to cut down on costs?
You know, the issue is that you want to venture into a business.
This business.
You have to look at everything before you go in there. Okay? If you go in there, there are rules and regulations that might guide you. If you build your own house and you want to dwell in or you want to give it to your family members to dwell in, the act will not inflate on you. But when it comes to mine, that I want to put it on the commercial platform, for me to collect money from people, then you have to abide by the rules and regulations. And then one thing also, okay, let's go on. There are a lot of issues.
Definitely. But before we come back to you, I'm just going to go to Nanekuya Apia. Nanekuya, do you have any direct question for Mr. Posu?
No, I don't have any question.
Right. As a tenant, have you experienced any situations in which you had difficulties with the landlord? Did the rent control department come in satisfactorily for you?
Yes, I have. Recently, I had an issue with my landlord. It was like a physical assault. A letter, and it was taken to rent control and the police first, and then rent control, and they sold it.
Please repeat that. We had difficulty hearing you. What was the nature of the issue?
Hello?
Yes. What was the nature of the situation?
So there was a verbal abuse first, and then it led to a physical assault.
Wow.
And then it went to rent control, yes. It went to rent control, and then they solved the issue, and then my money was refunded to me.
Right. So rent control was able to live up to their mandate.
Yes, it did very well. Yes.
Thank you so much. Now I'm going to go back to Mr. Posu. We heard the union mention that they were not consulted. Greda was consulted. Why are we relegating our tenants to the background?
I can't speak for the, you know, this review or this bill started since 2010, that they started reviewing those things. That's how come these 6 months has been increased to 1 year. There's an issue of licensing the rental agents. There's an issue of take full control over these hostels, and this. They are all in the bill. So when it comes out, so I don't know who and who were consulted. And Mr. Meribo has confirmed they were consulted. I don't know which tenancy union was consulted, because definitely it's a stakeholders meeting that was held severally before we came out with this bill. So as I said, I don't know which rent or tenancy union or agent, because they don't have a unionized, national unionized association. Okay. Just like the landlords association, we don't have a national. So if a part of the tenancy union and another part is somewhere else who has been, I'm not